Sherrod Blakely. We are here covering the Celtics, who just beat the Orlando Magic for the second time in 2 days, 114-97. And honestly, Sherrod, another kind of like, and again, as always, there's a party. Wherever Sherrod goes, there's a party going on. I, I'm going to mute you for a split second until the screaming stops at least. The music's nothing we can do about that. But the Celtics win. This was a another big Jaylen Brown game, and obviously we'll talk about him a great deal. Um, Honestly, I don't even know what else to talk about other than both Jaylen was outstanding, and the Celtics do seem to be kind of hitting their stride. And when they are healthy again, this is just another example of like what you're going to get. So I'll start with you, Sherrod. Number one takeaway has to be Jaylen. I mean, it's not just since the ESPN graphic that he's all of a sudden turned it around, but he's played 3 or 4 of his better games of the season since that little slight. But honestly, it's been going on now for probably 3 weeks or so, where he's just been playing an overall better brand of basketball.
Yeah, and a lot of that, John, has to do with, I think, Kristaps Porzingis' return.
His buddy.
Yeah, that's his buddy. And there were obviously opportunities that they hooked up and connected tonight. But more than that, he seems to be getting a better flow of how to make those same connections with some of his other teammates as well. This was a really good game. The more you watch this team play, they look like a relay team where you can put anyone in a league leg, anyone in an anchor, anyone in the middle, and they're still going to run a really fast time. Whereas before, things had to be in a certain sequential order for this team to be really good. Tonight was a great example of that. Jaylen Brown had 31 points, 17 of which came in the fourth. And even after he was killing it, Tatum comes in there, I think the middle part of the fourth quarter, to just really put the nail in the coffin. And if you go all the way back to the first half, Jrue Holiday was the guy that really controlled things, had 14 points for the game, all coming in the first half. And Kristaps Porzingis low-key had a double-double with 15 and 10. This team is figuring out what the great teams are able to do, and that is find ways to win and keep the opponent guessing as to how that's going to come about.
And that's what they do, and that's what they did. And it's just kind of like, as you said, just a testament to how the entire thing looks, start to finish when you have everybody out there, and what you can withstand. Each day a different person can step up. You can have somebody else go off like Banchero. And it doesn't really matter. Tatum can have a ho-hum game where he's not, drilling everything. Doesn't matter. Holiday goes off for 14 points in the first half, stops scoring. Doesn't matter. It was just nonstop. It was all game long. Just kind of felt like one of those games where they just had control of it from start to finish.
Yeah, and this is a team, Orlando, that just looking at the way they play and looking at the rest of the Eastern Conference as a whole, would not be surprised if this is a team that they see in either the first or second round of the playoffs. And so for the Celtics, I think this game had additional meaning than obviously keeping the winning streak at home intact and beating a team in the East. This is a team that had your number. Orlando came in here, I think, having won their last 4 games before the last 2 games against the Celtics. And that the Celtics, this was a course correction type of weekend for them. This was an opportunity to remind Orlando and to remind those folks who think that Orlando has a number that not so fast, my friend. This is a different kind of Celtics team. There's a different level of mental toughness that I think this Celtics team has that we haven't seen in the past. And again, to beat a team that has had your number the way Orlando has, and to beat them soundly, back-to-back games, it says a lot about where this team's at in terms of their growth from a year ago.
How much of it, we talked about it last game, how much of it was, that kind of the okay, young upstarts, whippersnappers. I'm not buying what you're selling. And again, whether there was talking on the Orlando side or not, it's definitely, these both felt like kind of statement sort of games. Just how they, just the effort start to finish and how they got up for it. There was emotion. They were chirping. Felt like they wanted it.
They did. They totally did. And the thing that the Celtics are doing, I think, a much better job of is figuring out when to exploit certain mismatches and when to shift to another potential mismatch that they could really work. And they did a great job of that tonight. And again, I can't help but look at this team and think of them as a relay team where you have 4 legitimately dominant players who at any given point in the game are going to take over. And as an opponent, you really can't figure out who's going to set it off, who's going to be that first leg, if you will. And again, it's one of the many problems that they're going to pose, not just for the Orlando Magic, but for teams in the entire NBA, and why so many think this team is going to be one of, if not the last team standing when all said and done.
Yeah, well, I'll ask this, but I want to stick on the Jalen stuff. How much of this is like with Jalen? So much of it really had to do with as much his up here than his physical skills. Yes, he cooled from 3-point land over the last couple of seasons. He's kind of come back down a little bit. I know there's questions about, left hand and things like that. And there's always the talk about what he can't do, but it always felt like it mattered less if he chose to do the right things, which he seems to be choosing to do much more now. As far as the decision making and the quick decision making that he's going, because he's always been a tough shot guy. He get in his bag, he can do ridiculous things. He's always made contested twos and turnarounds and all of those things. And obviously he's athletic and obviously he's great in transition. But everything that he's doing now seems to be based off of kind of what's going on up here.
Well, the one thing, John, I think you touched on it a second ago, that he's doing, I think, a much better job of the last few games is being a quicker thinker. Jalen has always been a thoughtful guy and a grand scheme of thoughtfulness, but sometimes he has shown a tendency to wait too damn long to make a decision, and that's not happening now. And it's a great thing to see, because more times than not, when he's thinking quickly, that means he's leaning a little bit more on his athleticism meshing with just his ability to process things quickly, and it's working out really well for him because he's such a good athlete. When he's making quick actions and things like that, it puts the defense in a bit of a bind, because athletically speaking, he can probably get to most spots that he wants to when he wants to get there. And when he's doing that quickly, it makes it much more harder to stop that and limit that. And it's making him a much more, I think, impactful player. And like I said, Porzingis being back in the fold is so, all these guys benefit from having here. If you watch this game, you can see that when the Celtics run any type of pick and roll, pick and pop action with Porzingis, defenses struggle with that. But Jalen, more than anyone else, has shown the ability to benefit from that, because, again, it puts him in a situation where teams have to play him a little bit differently than they want to. And because he's making quick decisions in that regard, he becomes a load, a tremendous load for them to try to limit and contain.
Yeah. Which version of the Celtics do you like better, the small ball Celtics or the one with the two bigs? Because you had two different teams here. Just in terms of style, obviously your boy Lamar doesn't get action in here, but today you played all the guys, right? You had Keita, you had you had Porzingis and Horford. You had your full complement of big guys. What did you notice style-wise? Any changes here? Obviously the other day they just played fast, but I don't think they played slow. I think there was still some carryover here tonight.
No, I think they played at a different tempo, a different pace, because I think when they went back and looked at the video from the first game, and they saw lots of opportunities where they could literally play bully ball and run fast in the same game. You just have to time it right. And they did that. You look at the final numbers, even though there was the Celtics were plus 10 on points in the paint, it was much more lopsided than that. They dominated this team in terms of getting points in the paint, whether it was on post-ups, whether it was on drives, whether it was on guys diving to the basket. They did pretty much what they wanted to. And if you're Orlando, this is the precarious position that they put you in going forward. When you play the Celtics, they've shown the ability to play bully ball. They've shown the ability to outrun you. They've shown the ability to defend you on a level that you're not quite used to them defending you at. And it really makes it like a pick your poison approach. How are you gonna beat this team if you're the Orlando Magic, if they're doing pretty much finding ways to beat you in different ways, and you haven't been able to show any type of resistance particularly well against any of them? This is why the Celtics are just an absolute pain in the ass to the rest of the NBA, because they have the ability to impact the game at a high level in a multitude of ways at both ends of the floor.
And that's the thing is, I'm not going to, I don't want to disparage the Magic. I like them, and I think they've done well. But I think they've outkicked their coverage a little bit in terms of record and where they are, and that's not a bad thing. And they're not as good as the 2 seed in the East. Um, and I think at the end of the day, the measuring stick for the Celtics is going to be how you're playing against the Bucks, how you're playing against the Sixers, and ultimately, I think how you're playing against the Heat as well. I think you can get good things out of the Pacers and the Magic, who can be fun, and I think could be a little bit of a challenge. But ultimately, that's what it's going to come down to. So I don't think Orlando's there yet. But there's a lot to like there. I'm talking about Banchero just on his own. I know he had such a bad game last game that you just kind of forget how good he's actually been. He's pretty mature dude for year two, just in terms of his ability to get where he wants to go, his shot making. Yeah, he's a pretty good playmaker all around. That's a really solid player over there.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning when he was drafted, there's a lot of talk about good player, someday probably an all-star. I was texting a scout earlier today, and we were talking about Banchero, and I think his impression is similar to what many of us thought, and that is he has progressed to being an above-average player quicker than most thought. Right now, when you're talking about Eastern Conference All-Stars, he absolutely is in the conversation, and I don't think many people coming into this season would have thought he would be a legitimate option to consider as an all-star in the Eastern Conference this year. But when you look at his ability to score at the rim, his ability to put the ball on the floor and finish, his jump shot, which was a big question mark for him, he has the potential to be a very, very good player. And Orlando, like I said, this is the kind of team that I think, John, to your point, I think they are coming a little bit back to earth. And will probably finish anywhere, I think, no worse than sixth in the Eastern Conference, but could potentially finish third, possibly fourth as well. And that's the type of team, if the Celtics have the kind of season that they're on track to have, that's a team that you're probably going to see in the second round. Maybe even the first, well, probably the second round. And getting a sense of how they play, how you need to play against them, showing them different styles that you can beat them with. It's important for the Celtics to take teams like Orlando seriously, because that was my issue with them in the past couple of years, where there would be teams that they may see in the playoffs or that would have no shot at the playoffs, and they would basically take that night off and let those teams get a level of confidence against them, and in some instances beat them, when it just should never happen. This team is much better at keeping its foot on the gas pedal for longer stretches than we've seen in the past. They don't do it all the time, but there's a definite sense that they understand the importance of beating any and everyone on their schedule, regardless of where they are in the standings.
Yeah, and so you are now approaching you're approaching the 21-6 mark, all right? Of what you had with last year's team, and they're about to head out west here for this little stretch here through the holidays, but they're close, right? 20-5, the 21-6, and that's around the time that things kind of cooled off. What's interesting about this start to the season is they had their whether it was Porzingis injured or we're getting a little bored or whatever it was, kind of growing pain sort of thing. Holiday was a little dinged up, whatever it was. They kind of went through that like, here we go. They're forgetting that they're better than everybody sort of thing, or they're, taking the easy road out. It's actually nice to see them self-correct that quickly, kind of back to where they are here, because this is pretty complete basketball, definitely offensively, just in terms of their process. So again, it's like, can you sustain? Can you maintain? You're not going to be able to do it for 82 games, but like, I joke tweeted last game, like, can't you do this every single night? And, as I said, some people were like, nah, man, you can't possibly. I don't know. Why can't you? Like when you've got serious people out there, and when Brown is playing like this, and you've got Holiday and White who are never taking a night off, Horford who's never taking a night off, Porzingis who seems to do things right all the time. I don't think you've got like I I I I think this group, generally speaking, is going to be less prone to inconsistency than previous iterations of the team. And ultimately, a lot of it would come down to Tatum and Brown and whether they were kind of trying to do their own thing or trying to do too much, and maybe didn't feel like they had the supporting cast around them. So that's one of the reasons that they did, or they're, kind of inconsistent effort from night to night, where some nights you'd have Tatum being like, where is he tonight? I'm not sure. I think there's less of that. Even if you do have Tatum kind of getting in his feelings and barking at refs and holding onto the ball and getting mad or grumpy or things like that, like you can overcome it because, again, we talked about at the beginning of the year, there's so many grown-ups in the room at this point. I do wonder, I'm not going to say slump-proof, but I do wonder whether this team is going to experience one of those kind of dips like you had last year after that scorching start. I'm kind of leaning towards far less likely.
Yeah, I think there will be a little bit of a dip, but I don't think it will be as extended a dip as we've seen in past teams. And again, John, a lot of that comes down to something that you just touched on a second ago, and that's maturity. You know, you have guys who have been through the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations and the triumphs that you go through in the NBA. Drew Holiday knows what it's like to be the last team standing and hold that championship trophy. Al Horford knows what it's like to go to the postseason and come up short and have that hunger, that thirst to be a champion grow over time. And your two best players are at a level of maturity now where there are no excuses for being immature. You have been through, you had deep playoff runs. You know what it's like to advance in situations where maybe you shouldn't have. You know what it's like to be disappointed and not getting it done at home in a game 7. All those experiences collectively have made this team, I think, a lot more tougher mentally than we've seen in the past, because the players that matter the most to their success have all these life experiences that they can draw upon to help them navigate some of these games. You know, they went into these last 2 games against Orlando knowing this team has had their number, and yet you didn't see them try to knock Orlando out in the first quarter or just try to do too much, which we've seen in the past. When they tried to make a point, they try to make that point in the first 60 seconds of the game, which is dumb. This team doesn't do those type of dumb things anymore. They understand that for them to win, these are the things that we have to do against this particular opponent. Let's do this, and then do this, and then do this, and at the end of the day, we win by 12 and go to hell home. They understand what it takes to win. And again, they're not going to have games like this every single night. They're going to have games where they're going to play like crap and the other team is going to play great and they'll lose. That's part of being in the NBA. But what we're seeing from this team is an understanding, a fundamental understanding that there's a certain way to bring about long-term success, and there are mile markers you have to accomplish and go through to get there. And they seem to, for the first time, willing to take those steps in order to get that end of the run, end of the journey destination that they're looking for. That's the difference with this team than I've seen in the last couple of teams that we've seen. Talent-wise, we're good enough to get there, but there was something missing. And I think that they finally have the pieces in place where that's something that we couldn't quite put our fingers on, but we knew it was there. They figured it out.
I left this comment up here because I agree here. I think last year was unsustainable white hot shooting that you thought might come down to earth, and it did. And then that's kind of all they could do for so many parts of last year was hope that the threes went in. And I think the three obsession and why, someone like Gary, your buddy Gary, our buddy, asked those questions is like, is that it? Is the whole game based on if you take enough and make enough, you win, and if you don't, you lose? Like, it can't just boil down to that. And I think what's funny is their performance both validates and disproves Joe's belief in it, because it isn't just about launching them. It's about how you go about getting your shots and what you do. And their process right now over these last few games is just so much better in terms of how they're going about getting the shots that they're getting. So it is interesting because, again, last game was a perfect example. They were shooting and missing threes, but they were getting all the right looks, going about it the right way every single time, and eventually it fell. And you're right, you just keep doing the right things. More often than not, it's going to pay out, and that's what's been happening.
Yeah, and along those same lines, John, I look at something as simple as Sam Hauser no longer being a catch and shoot guy. Sam is actually looking to score around the basket. He's looking to do things that show his understanding that I can't just be a three-point shooter and help this team win. You see it with Tatum. You see it with Jaylen Brown. You see it from the top of the shelf to the bottom level. Guys are understanding they can no longer rely on one trick in order to win. And that is part of their growth and evolution as a team. That's part of their understanding that if you want to be a champion, there's no one path that you take. There's no one path once you're in position that you have to lean on and take. They're figuring out how to win, and again, having been around championship caliber teams before, it's the intangible things like understanding fundamentally who you are and how you can be successful that often differentiates you between a team that's just as talented but maybe doesn't have that focus, and one that moves on to the next round and potentially brings the Larry O'Brien home.
Yeah, and again, I do think like the more you see games like this, the more you start to think that the Celtics are different. I can't stress enough how much of it comes down to the way Jalen is playing right now, because again, I thought at the beginning of the season it was Brown and Tatum, of course, but like it was. If they can't do it, they'll never do it. With this supporting cast, they'll never do it. And if that means there's not an evolution in their approach and the style that they play, you're just never going to have it. And like, I think Brown even more so than Tatum recently has really embodied that. He talked a lot about sacrifice last year. He actually is sacrificing more this year, even though tonight, he ended up as the high scorer, and playing better basketball because of it. And as we said, Tatum kind of said the comments the other night. I think he buys it too. I think like they've almost accelerated into, we always talked about, and this is the thing is like, well, some people don't realize it until they're 30 and they're like, oh crap, I don't care about scoring titles and all-star teams anymore. I got to win. The clock is ticking. I think they're accelerated in that regard because they've gone through all of these battles along the way, and because they've been so close, and because they have to look around and recognize like this is it. So I think they're actually starting to reach it, which I think really bodes well. Both Josue and Bobby at the Garden, we're going to get to those guys in just a minute. We want to tell everybody, and I want to say hi to all of our regulars in the chat, particularly Dudley and Kess. When you guys are both in here and going back and forth and chatting in the chat, I love it. Eventually, you guys are co-hosting one of these Garden Reports. We will do that. I guarantee it. I want to tell you guys about our sponsor here at the Garden Report, and that is FanDuel, exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network and the official partner of the NFL. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston. You get $150 in bonus bets when you place a winning $5 money line bet. That's all you have to do. Once again, FanDuel.com/Boston. Go in there, sign up, download the app. Super easy to use. All of the best spreads, a lot of great offers that come throughout the season that you can cash in on, not just this. So they're constantly running specials, updated almost weekly. So make sure you take part in the action right now, FanDuel.com/Boston. And tell you one more sponsor, I'm going to Tangway myself.
I've been looking for the best deal on Celtics tickets, and with over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events every single day on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports festivals, and more. You can use my code DREAMERSPRO for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code DREAMERSPRO. Make sure you check the link in the description to download the app.
We were trying to get a player on the call as well.
We got Josue in the house.
Josue.
What's going on, fellas? How we doing?
All right, Josue, what do you got?
So Joe Mazzulla, I feel like he's trying to get away from the whole Mazzulla ball, which has been popping up in a few articles here and there last week. He's calling this Celtics basketball. This is what it looks like. Everyone connected defensively, taking a possession at a time, and then having that translate to the offensive end where guys are executing, finding the open guys, swinging the ball around, and getting it to the hot hand, which obviously was Jaylen Brown in this one, especially in that second half. Incredible performance out of Jaylen, man. He just had it all in terms of reading the defenses, knowing when to attack, especially in transition. And the thing I'm loving about the Celtics defense right now is the moment they create that stop, the moment they regain possession, there's a guy taking off, right? And it's whether it's Drew Holiday, whether it's Derek White, they're making that outlet pass, and at one moment it was Jaylen Brown, doing a little bit of everything today. So that's how I envision this team success in terms of turning those defensive stops into easy offensive possessions, and this is a great example of that for sure.
Let me ask you a question real quick,
Josue.
Is there a single team in the NBA that doesn't believe that the passing the ball and playing a team style isn't quote unquote Magic basketball or Cavaliers basketball. Is there a single team out there that doesn't believe that that's their brand of basketball?
Talk to us, Josue. Talk to us.
No, there isn't. But
oh, we got to play Wizards basketball.
Well, at least listen.
Basketball.
At least he didn't. At least it wasn't personified, right? He said he's calling it Celtics basketball. He did.
He doesn't want it all. Yeah.
I'm telling you, he saw the same thing that I saw. A few articles here and there, kind of labeling it Missoula ball. He nipped it in the bud today, calling it this is Celtics basketball. So I'm sure that's a narrative that we're going to continue to hear throughout this West Coast road trip.
How do we even define Missoula ball? What would that be? Is it Missoula ball just simply take a bunch of threes?
That's how most people would describe it. I mean, that was a lot of the criticism he received last season for the way this team was executing. When things got bad, they reverted to everyone line up around the arc and let's see which one gets high. And that obviously that wasn't something that you can rely on every single night.
Yeah, they only took 36 threes tonight. That's not Missoula ball.
But you know what, John? This is if I'm Joe Missoula, I would. If I'm asked that question, I say, you know what Missoula ball is? Finding an effing way to win the game. That's my ball. That's my and to me, that's exactly what they did against Orlando. John, as you pointed out, they didn't take as many threes. Why? They didn't need to. They could literally back these Orlando guards and wings and bigs in a block and get buckets at the rim. You saw Tatum do it. You saw Jalen do it. You saw Derek White. Porzingis, you go down the line, and they did what you're supposed to do, and that's figure out a way to win. And the thing, and I talked about this earlier, Josue, they're finding different ways to beat you so that once you get into, let's say, a playoff situation and you're preparing to play them, they've shown the ability to beat you with bully ball. They've shown the ability to just hit you with the three ball. They've shown the ability to shut you down with their defense. And if you're preparing for a team like that, which path are you going to take? Because you know that you're getting smashed every exit that you try to take off this road. And that, to me, is one of those low-key benefits that the Celtics are building for themselves. Now, Jaylen Brown had an awesome game tonight, and he absolutely deserves every bit of the praise and credit and all that. But one thing that I will say about Jaylen, and this is something that as we talk about Jaylen and we talk about things that he can do to get better, because he's one of the better players on this on his roster who's consistently shown himself to be a better version the following year. The one thing I want to see Jaylen, and this is a weird thing, but it's something that the great ones are able to do. How is he able to contribute to winning when the shot isn't falling? Because I feel like right now with Jaylen, if he's not making shots, I'm not sure what he's bringing to the table. Whereas you look at Tatum has shown the ability to rebound. He's shown improvement as a playmaker. And he's done other things night in and night out lately that show that he doesn't have to go out and score 35 points on 10 for 16 shooting in order to be impactful. He can have a 4 for 17 game shooting the ball, or maybe he gets to the line a lot or gets a lot of rebounds. Jaylen has to get to that point where he can find different ways to contribute to winning and not always have to lean on the scoring, which is great. But we all know it's not going to be there every night. What do you do in those nights when it's not there?
Right. Well, I feel like in this game, it was he was passing the ball and it seemed like that was sort of his focus in that first quarter. Right.
He's great in that regard. Absolutely.
Right. Like, let's get everyone else involved, and I'll get mines later. And I'm seeing a lot of that, over the past couple of games. Maybe it's the ESPN graphic, maybe it's the talk, whatever the case may be. Jalen's clearly making an emphasis in that part of his game for sure. And I think that's something he's been trying all year long. I think that's why it really bothered him a little bit, right? Well, bothered him enough to respond to that graphic when he didn't have an assist for 2 games in a row, and coupled with how many field goal attempts. I think that's the part that kind of stung him. It's just like, oh wait, so I'm a selfish player. Like I'm trying in that regard. I've been trying. If you're not noticing it, that's you not watching the games. You're just looking at the box scores. So now it's starting to show in the box scores. But I also think it's just something that he's been doing mentally in trying to find the open guy and then getting his through the flow of the offense, not just saying, okay, give me the ball, it's my turn now. Where he used to get into that habit.
Well, again, any past criticism of things that Tatum and Brown do when they're less effective has been mostly warranted, just in terms of either trying to do too much, keeping your head down, taking unnecessarily difficult shots. Brown's just not doing that right now, like at all. He's not doing anything you would have said about Brown to be critical. Like I said, dribbling with his head down into traffic, all of those things. He's not doing it. Tatum still doing a little of it, still unnecessarily just tough, fallaways early in the clock where he's just decided, I'm going to break this guy down. I'm going to do my little turnaround. I'm going to sink it. It's going to be cold as ice. And it's the worst shot for him. I wish he would eliminate those completely from his repertoire. He doesn't need them. Backing a guy down, working him in the post, getting a turnaround within 10, 11 feet, different shot when you're able to shoot up and over people than, sometimes what Tatum's doing with, the pull-up threes, which he's statistically the worst in the NBA at, but the worst by far. So especially at volume. But I mean, as far as pull-up threes go, Tatum's the worst among the top 40 or 50 in terms of people who attempt those. It's terrible. So those are choices. Just decide you're not going to do it. Brown, a lot of what he's doing now is a choice. I'm going to do less of the stuff that could get us in trouble, going to play smarter basketball, going to play quicker, make the right reads, get rid of the ball, move without the ball. And like the last, I don't know how long you want to call it. You can say since the graphic, but it's probably been going on 3 weeks to a month right now where he's playing a better brand of basketball.
And the thing that he's doing, Jalen, that I love to see him do this is when he has the ball and he's got a little guy like 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" on him. He's not just going to raise up if he's not into a flow of rhythm. He's going to back that dude down to about the elbow, realize that the help is not coming, and just shoot the hell over the top of him.
Yeah.
2 points. To me, that's just easy money right there.
Right.
And Jalen is doing more of those type of taking advantage of that mismatch, more so not so much relying on his athleticism, but just his ability to just literally leap over a guy who's guarding him. And again, it's little things like that Jalen is doing so much more of, and is to the point where when he's doing it, it doesn't look as though he's thinking about it. It's almost like it's a muscle memory thing. Like, oh, I got the ball. Jalen Suggs is 4 inches shorter than me. I got a 40-inch vertical. He might get up to 36. I elevate. I've got a good 6-7 inch room to get my shot off without him touching it. Let's go there. Let me shoot this from 16, 17 feet out.
Right. Yeah, you know what else too, I'm gonna call you Jalen. Wow, you know what else too, Sherrod? Jalen
I wish my bank would call me Jalen. I wish they would call me Jalen.
you wish your account looked like that, right?
Exactly.
The difference also too is he's anticipating the double team, whereas before I feel like he would get so into the kind of like the zone, so to speak, that he would forget that like, oh, there's going to be a double team coming. So then sometimes he get caught up, it would turn into a turnover. Sometimes he pass out of it, but either way, it disrupts the entire offensive possession. Now he's anticipating the double team. He's doing that thing where if he doesn't see it coming, he's not only posting up his the mismatch, but he's going to the free throw line, getting that fadeaway, creating enough space where he can get that jump shot off, and it's money. It's been money so far. Very, very efficient basketball out of Jalen, not just from a playmaking standpoint, but also just from shooting. Making sure that he's staying in that range of 50% or better.
Bobby, it's the Jalen show.
Yeah, impressive stuff. And he responded well from a bunch of criticism early this season of the playmaking, of the assist totals, of pretty much everything. I think the defense is on point right now. I think the shooting came along probably the best it has all season in this game, which is probably all he'd been missing since the first 3 games of this homestand, where he played well but didn't hit threes. So you mix that in, and he's unstoppable out there. The transition play in this game especially. I was curious, John, how they'd fare, because they stumbled into an effective play style against the Magic in the first game, right, where they go smaller,
right.
They got the cutters and all that.
Yeah, we'll run and pass and cut and play fast, right?
But now in this game, you're bigger, you're going double big for long stretches, but they were still able to do the same things. And you had Tatum in foul trouble, so Brown had to step into some bench minutes where Tatum wasn't out there, where he's really struggled. And that stretch he had in the first half on the 14-4 run where he was doing everything, that's probably the best bench rotation he's ever had without Tatum out there. So he was amazing.
If you see, like you talk about the Brown evolution, if Brown's able to lead those, and you'll see it in the on-off numbers, because most of those end up coming in those stretches, which is Brown with the bench versus Tatum with the bench. And over the last couple of seasons and early this year, the numbers were staggering in Tatum's favor, and Brown not nearly as effective without Tatum on the court. I mean, staggering numbers. And so when Brown's able to lead that unit and keep them, keep it together. And you know what it comes down to, honestly, a lot of times it's how can you have 3 of the top 6 out there and then you have the JB unit and the JT unit with 2 subs each. When they're down a man, whether it was Horford on a back-to-back or Porzingis when he was hurt, you're going 3 deep on the bench there, and it does get a little bit tougher. But yes, Jalen being effective with the bench, which again had another good game, even if the scoring's not there. And Scal mentioned on the broadcast and put up a graphic, 26th in the league in scoring for the bench. But second in rebound rate, second in 3-point percentage, plus minus, I think overall was third or something in the league. So the minutes are effective, and it's mixing and matching with the right guys and getting the right combos. I think they've got it. I think the Jalen Holiday bench group early in the season wasn't working well. Right. And then it kind of became Jalen and White a little bit more. And I think that started to work a little bit better. But one way or the other, you're entirely right, Bobby. Like, that's a huge part of his evolution, where you can take Tatum off and have Jalen kind of be that guy and have it work.
Yeah, they're winning a lot of non-Tatum minutes this year. I don't have the full season numbers right in front of me. I can pull those up, but that's a huge change over last year's team. And you mentioned you do have more options in terms of the combinations you can go to there. You can't go wrong with any of them, but obviously White's going to be the guy who, from a plus-minus standpoint, is always going to be generally your best player. So wherever he is, feels like they're going to win those minutes, and staggering him into those second unit works, because I feel like White can go out there and play 48 minutes and be fine. His durability, his conditioning, his ability to be consistent across an entire game is pretty remarkable. And I'm looking at the Tatum off numbers right here this year. They are +6 per 100 with him off the floor. I think it was +2.5 last year. So they weren't winning many of those a year ago, and now they're much, much better in those stretches, which is key. I mean, you look back to Game 7, Tatum goes down, and they didn't know what to do. They couldn't do anything. So now you're in a much better place, where I feel like if you lose any of these guys, I mean, you beat the Magic on Friday without Porzingis and Horford, which was just incredible.
And Luke, don't forget that.
And Luke. I talked to Luke pregame.
I'm sure you did. First, I'm going to tell you guys about HelloFresh. HelloFresh.com/CLNS free. You go there and you are going to get free breakfast for life. That's not a joke. Every single time you order, you get breakfast items. Bobby got like a bushel of muffins the first time through. I just got my HelloFresh box. Tonight, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going to make a pork and string bean stir fry for the fam. So I'm looking forward to that. Already made the shepherd's pie. That was pretty solid, even though I Zannisized it just a little bit. But I didn't need it, but I felt I had to do it.
Would you bake a pie for it?
I baked it into a pie. But you guys know the deal by now. You go get it. HelloFresh right to your door. Big box, fresh ingredients. Everything's pre-portioned out. You go in there, follow a menu card, zip, zap, zoop. You got a legit restaurant quality meal right there at your home. Feed the whole family if you need to. You can get customized meals for 2, high protein, veggie, keto, gluten-free, whatever you want to do. Mix and match proteins and vegetables, different styles, whatever you want. It's there for you. Bobby's basically a pescatarian. He usually goes fish. Sherrod basically only eats red meat, so he's all about the meatloaf. Yeah, exactly. And that's all you got to do. So HelloFresh.com/CLNS free. Bobby, jump into what you were going to talk about. You talked to Luke.
Yeah, he seems to be fine. He got hurt. There was obviously a lot of questions about why he got scratched like a minute into that game. I guess he got hurt dunking in the pregame warm-up line. So he was pretty sore.
Damn, Bobby. You did your boy like that, man?
Yeah, and they think he'll miss a week or 2 here. They don't know the exact timing, but he's already feeling better. So not a huge concern there. It's just a grade 1 adductor strain. So he's going to travel and be back in a week or 2.
Okay, so there you go. He's doing okay. We can breathe a sigh of relief, everybody.
I don't mind the Kata minutes, but it's good that he's doing okay. I didn't mean it like that. But
I was surprised to see Kata.
I think this is a great opportunity for him, especially when they go out west. There's gonna be some great matchups for him to just sort of help the Stars a little bit with minutes here and there and spurts.
That Lakers
it was surprising.
Game,
I wonder if Kata played because they were trying to keep
get him ready.
Well, I wonder if they're trying to keep Porzingis down, but he wasn't that down. He played 29 minutes. It wasn't whatever. I was actually surprised Porzingis played at all to go from that calf strain, which I thought was a re-aggravation, which might kind of lead us back down the road of like, here's a little
So we
bit of
just talked to
maintenance.
him.
I didn't think we were going to see him till the West Coast trip.
Yeah, same.
Sherrod's got a bolt. Everyone say bye to Sherrod.
Later, Sherrod.
So we just talked to him, John. He said it was more precautionary with the back-to-back. They don't want him playing back-to-back so soon after the original strain there. So I figured that was the case because he appeared on the injury list in the first game, that second Cavs game, the first half of the back-to-back, probable with the calf, which was weird. It was like they setting him up to miss the second game, and that's exactly what it was. He didn't even warm up or try to play in that second game. So I think that was more setting him up from an injury standpoint to miss the second game on the report, because he looked fine tonight. I thought physically he looked great. You did see him running weird a little bit in that second half against Cleveland in that game, but he said he's fine. They're talking about next week because they have another back-to-back, the Warriors and Kings. He's not sure if he's going to play in the second half of that one or first half, wherever they would decide to rest him. But that's obviously more of a conversation now with him to try to, as you said, scale down his minutes in this game, maybe with the Cater ones, and keep him out of back-to-backs, which isn't something he wants to do. Not something Al wants to do either, obviously, but they've been pretty stern about holding him out in that spot, and now they might do the same thing with Kristaps.
Didn't we say that it was possible? Didn't we surmise that they might split those guys in back-to-backs all season long, with one playing the front end and one playing the back? I'm surprised they both sat, especially if you're concerned about the back-to-backs there, why not just, sit one of them first? Doesn't it make sense? You just play smart. Nobody cares.
Yeah, it was weird.
You've got bigger goals in mind, so why risk it? Because you're burning out your other players and your other starters when you're hanging them out to dry without any bigs there. Those are tough minutes. I don't think Tatum wants to play a ton of small ball five there, and those guys have to. And again, they played great, and it got Lamar some look, so it wasn't the worst thing in the world. But I would imagine they would just stagger those.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that happened. Maybe they felt like with Cornette and the other guys, they had enough there for the second game. And then, of course, Cornette got scratched, so they were really shorthanded. But
yeah, that's
I would have figured
they anticipate Cornette to be out.
I would have figured they'd split him up, but maybe it did come down to how he felt going into the second game and wanted to try it out in both. Just couldn't. But I don't know. It didn't end up mattering, obviously, which was good. And in this game, I just love their ability to win, playing in a different style with different rotations, with a different ball handle at the point of attack. You had Tatum in the first game rolling and running things, and Brown in this one. So that's been a big thing for Joe this year, is winning in different ways. He keeps saying that. His message has been super consistent this year, and the team seems to be responding to it. Porzingis talked a lot again tonight after the game about the culture in this room and how easy it's just been to step in and succeed fast with this group. And he said, I had him look back at the first Magic game, because that was obviously one of their worst losses of the year. And he said he felt like they were getting a little bit lazy with the details going into that game. Yeah. And they had a film session, really try to sharpen up on the little things after that game. And that's pretty much been the start of the stretch where they've only lost once since, in that Indiana game, the in-season tournament game there. Other than that, it's just been this long home stretch where they've won every game. Now they're going to face some different types of opponents, some of the best teams out west. And so it's going to be a challenge, but now they're healthy. Now they have a bunch of different stuff that they can go to here. I thought they learned a lot about themselves on this homestand, and now they found the full version of themselves. So now it's about sustaining, right? Because they were 21-5 last year, John. Yeah. They slipped up and started getting lazy, and things just slid downhill. They blew some games, and they became a more mediocre team the rest of the way after the hot start. Now you're 20-5, going out on a long road trip. Is the same thing going to happen here? Can you stay tight? Can you stay consistent and continue to win game after game? I just love the consistency on this homestand against two really tough teams in Cleveland and Orlando.
That's what we were talking about. Yeah, sorry, Josue.
No, I was going to say, I like their chances of sustaining that, at least for the short term, going into this West Coast road trip. I love that they have this momentum going right now, especially because, like you said, Bobby, last year, this was around that time where they started to slip up. You started to see old habits pop up again, and you saw them get in their own way. But I feel like this time is different because of the talent that these guys have and the ability with, guys like Brown and Tatum and Porzingis, capable of scoring 20 plus in essentially in one half, right? Most of the time it's been the second half. And I feel like if they're able to build that cushion, one of those guys just taking the mantle offensively, it makes a difference. You know, you all of a sudden you have more than enough to close out games, or you need that extra last punch from, you know, Tatum or Brown to shut the door on a team when you're up by 4 or 5. You know, I think those are the type of moments where the Celtics are going to be in really good position to close out games out west.
Yeah, Sherrod and I hit on this earlier. It was kind of like last year it was here, you know, the 21-6 start, 21-5 start, whatever it was, and then they went on a little dip for like 40 games. I mean, it wasn't they weren't 500 for that stretch, but they were fine. They were like, if all of their stats, both in terms of record, you know, net rating, offensive rating, they were the 5th or 6th best team in the East, you know, just in terms of just straight numbers for
and
about
it started with
game,
this series. It was about the same
a 40
time.
game stretch, and this is they fell apart out west. So the one cool thing here is I feel like they already kind of dipped a little bit this year, right? Like they experienced it a little where they got, you know, I don't want to say lazy, but whatever it was, you know, as you put it well, Bobby, they kind of got out of what they do, you know, and now they're not doing that, you know. So
you know what I think was huge was that game against the Bulls where they had to run it up. You know, they could have just sat down and chilled in the second half in that game and taken a break, but they had to play the whole way through. And Joe said it then too. That was a good lesson in terms of sustaining quarter to quarter, making a big lead even bigger. I still go back to that Shaughnessy exchange last year. I think it was during the first round. And,
it was the first round. Yeah.
It was after game 1 or 2. They had a huge lead. It dipped down to like 10, and they won by like 12 or whatever. I'm just making that up, but it was that kind of game. And Dan was like, "Oh, you know, the lead got way down there in the second half," and Joe was like, "Would you want us to go up by 50?" And Dan was like, yeah. And Joe was pretty consistent with that last year. Like, teams are going to come back, whatever. This year, it's been more, let's drive up that score and continue to build on the lead we already have here, which I think has been a encouraging message change for him. And they've played that way this year.
Exactly. Like, why would you accept that it might go bad? You know?
Right.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why? Like, yeah, you know, eventually we'll get lazy. We'll start jacking some bad shots, and then they'll. I get the whole teams make runs, but you're right. Like, just keep your foot on the gas. Doesn't make any sense.
I think it's the personnel too, though, guys. Like, again, I mean, we'll be saying this a lot this year. This just wasn't the same team that, you know, last year. They didn't have guys that could you know, you could plug in and just hold down the fort, so to speak, right? I mean, that's what we were talking about at, you know, at the last game when you're shorthanded like that, and all of a sudden Lamar Stevens has to play additional minutes. He's ready for that, and he showed that, you know, and that's a testament of how talented this team is, that you can plug in guys. Whereas last year, maybe that wasn't necessarily the case, especially in tough stretches. You know, you have, and then now you have enforcements and the Porzingis and the Drew Holidays, you know, on both ends. I just think that now, especially with the in-season tournament, like, that was almost like the perfect built-in excuse for them to say, "Oh yeah, we got to run up the score." Hey, it's not us; it's the NBA. But I think Joe Mazzulla's learned a lot about, man, this team can really the offensive production. This isn't a fluke. This isn't, you know, we're just hot in the beginning of the season type thing. This is something that they can carry on throughout the entire year.
Yeah, and these teams aren't laying down. The Magic, I said it to you, Josue, they kept coming back.
Especially in that last game too. Yeah.
They pushed 15-11 before halftime. They got within 6 in the third quarter. And Suggs, Paolo, Franz at times, those guys kept pushing back against them, and the Celtics had an answer every time. Great stretch to close the third. Fourth got a little close again early there. Love the response to close it. Tatum and Brown playing together. I feel like they're finding each other a little bit more, John. It feels that way. And overall, they have great sets that they can run time and time out. It's just awesome to watch right now. Joe seems to have a lot of confidence in the challenge now too. I think D'Amico put out that number that he's like 31 and 12 or something like that. 6 straight. Good one in the first half on that K to foul. Thought that was a really good spot to use, and then they scored 6 straight out of it. Joe deserves a lot of credit, and the players do too, because they have to go out and do this. But I feel like Joe's message has been a little bit more forceful in terms of pushing them to be better this year, clean up their weaknesses, and also make it simple what they have to do. Like, his message is relatively simple night in and night out, John, and then they go out there and do it. So
Right.
this is a whole different Joe this year.
Which is
too,
why
to be
he's
on the
not
field
over
different.
reliant on play calling, even though he's done it a little bit more this year. But he's not over reliant on it because he's like, we know what we're supposed to do. We've got the people out there to do it. Then it's just a matter of doing it, making the right reads, trusting in one another. Here's Missoula talking about, we talked about it earlier, this idea of, it's not Missoula ball, it's Celtics ball.
I don't usually see that much emotion from you, kind of like on the side. What brought that on, and just, I guess, generally speaking, what was Jalen's night like for you?
I think the players need to see that sometimes. I do, like everybody else, care about winning, and I do have fun. And I just thought it was a moment to show, I think we're starting to play what I would call Celtic basketball. From a mentality standpoint, from a toughness standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, and identity, reflecting what it means to play like the Celtics. And I think this week we've shown that, and I think the crowd has helped that, and I think our players really working to execute and buying in have helped that. And so I just thought it was a moment, a cool moment to be able to take that in, and it starts with our guys. And like you said, Jalen has really grown as a player. What he did in the fourth quarter was just playmaking, making the right play, whether it was pass or scoring, getting to his spot. And it's been really fun to watch him grow as a player this year, and our team's mindset.
When you talk about Celtics basketball, what is that for you?
I mean, what we're starting to show, right? It's opponents bring out the best in us, they challenge us, and we don't back down. We chip away at it, and we respond, and we dictate the mindset of the game, the physicality of the game, and we're just kind of playing with that type of identity. And I really seen that, especially over the last 4 games. And we may lose it from time to time, but we have to fight to keep this mindset and the identity that we have on both ends of the floor.
I love that last part because what my least favorite thing that this team used to say was, John, oh man, these teams don't play like this against everybody else. We get everybody's best shot. That used to drive me crazy. Of course that's going to happen. You got to be ready to answer that. And it can't just be an excuse after that, man, they got lucky tonight. These guys stink against everybody else. And that's what that would happen last year. Remember all the bad games they lost to the Magic, to the Pacers, to the Wizards? They lost
Oklahoma
countless
City
games last year.
without all their players, right?
Yeah, and they haven't done that this year. There's been a few slip-ups. The Charlotte one was bad, but very few. And they've taken care of business where they've had to. They've been consistent. And this series is a great example of it. Obviously, the Magic woke them up with the first game in Orlando and had them a little bit more ready for this one, I'd imagine. But at the same time, I felt like it was a continuation of things they've done against other lesser teams in the NBA to start this year. Because you just hated them. You'd expect it, John, right? Oh, big game against the Bucks. They're going to look amazing. Oh, they're playing the Wizards. We're going to see the worst version of the Celtics tonight. And I don't think that's what you expect from them anymore.
No. I mean, we talked about that. They had a stretch earlier in the year where they won there's a 4 or 5 game stretch where they won in ways they weren't accustomed to winning last year. And that was it was the Wizards game where they, won by 50, in another game where they crapped
the
out.
Pacers won by 50.
Yeah, but they also they lost a lead, came to pieces, and then turned it around instead of collapsing. That might have been the Jalen technical or the double turnover, and then they against the Heat. If
the Heat win was great.
Yeah, so there's a couple of games where they don't, those were games we would chalk them up as L's last year, and they're not doing it. So they are winning in different ways. They are extending leads.
The Toronto game, right?
Yeah, they're having some good third quarters. They're having, decent clutch moments, not across the board, but a lot more, consistently than last year, where I felt you're right. You could set your clock to it. And this feels like one of those where they're going to let them all the way back in, or this feels like one of those where they're letting these guys hang around too much. And, and absolutely they were, but by not playing defense and just jacking threes and just, so different overall mentality and vibe with this team in terms of how they're going about everything. They are about to head out west. We are going to wrap this in a little bit, guys. Any closing thoughts on this game?
Man, look out for Jalen, man. I don't think this is just this homestand. I think he's going to carry over for sure, and hopefully we see more of the same with this team, with the guys around him. Drew Holiday also, I think his offense is starting to heat up a bit. I thought he was terrific, especially with those few steals in transition on on Paolo, man, some of these are just, I don't know how he does it without obviously fouling. But I would just say that look out for that. I think Drew's going to have a big game coming up, big scoring night on this West Coast trip, and I think Jalen, this thing carries over for sure.
Yeah, I was going to go there too. I didn't know how to react to his slow start shooting to begin this year. He was just doing so much other. But he was just doing so much other stuff. He didn't really care about it. Like, he could shoot 40% every night if he's dominating defensively and grabbing all these offensive rebounds and stuff. Holiday. So to see him go out and have an efficient scoring game was nice, because I feel like that's something they need. That's something he needs too, because obviously you're going to night in, night out be like, who cares? I don't care how I play it for winning. But if you're shooting bad every night and just kind of that garbage man offensively, that's got to be tough sometimes. So for him to have this kind of efficient night offensively is got to feel good for him, because, everyone on the team's going to say, I don't care how I do, but you definitely feel better when you go 6-12 with 14.
The reality is it was just the percentage at the rim, which I think was fluky and not necessarily indicative of anything he was doing wrong.
And he said that,
because he's still shooting, close to 40% from three, plus 80% free throws. It's not like his shot is off, and he's actually pretty reliable. He's not seeking it out. He's not taking a ton of them, but he's got to be able. He knocks them down when it comes around to him. I think it was that stuff.
He's having the Brogdon. He's having the Brogdon thing at the rim.
Exactly. Like, his percentages are actually pretty close. It is a lot of Brogdonitis there, where it's pretty close. But when he's only averaging around 10, when you're only averaging around 10 field goals a game, if you have one of those 2 for 8 nights, it just looks bad,
Yeah.
But you're right. He does so many other things, and he affects the game. I said this last show. I'm sometimes stunned. I look at the box score, and I don't have any idea how many points he had.
His blocks were crazy tonight, Josue. You mentioned both of them. Yeah. I think he just ripped the ball from Paolo at one point, and then he had another similar one in the lane.
I feel like they ruled that a block, but I saw it as he just stripped him. Like he looked over for a second, and the ball was gone out of his hand. He was still in like motion to go for a layup, and Drew was already heading up the other way.
Yeah,
I told you, John. I didn't feel great before this homestand. Like, there wasn't anything to me saying this team's going to win the championship, and I feel really good about it. This series made me feel much better about that, and I still want to see them against some other teams. I'm glad we're starting to see the West here, some teams that are playing well too. But
it's Tatum and Brown.
I'm closer.
It's Tatum and Brown. It all comes down to having faith in them doing the right thing or not. And when you watch Jalen play the way he's played during this stretch, you're like, okay, one of them's got it for sure. And then with Tatum, I still think you want to see it more consistently. I still think there's things he's got to get away from in his game that hurt him, that he still just kind of leans into. What we've said about Tatum in the past, Bobby, is he leans into the things that he's worst at, which always drives me insane. And I don't understand why he does that. It's because he's got so many things that he does exceptionally well. I don't understand always reverting back to that weird, like, this comfort food of these, these step backs and these pull-ups and these turnarounds contested with somebody on him. Makes no sense, especially when you see him just basically being able to get wherever he wants to go at will. He can get to any spot. He can get to the basket. It's really strange watching him struggle. He
shot 0 for 5 on mid-rangers in this one.
Yeah.
All on those little fadeaway bump and turnarounds.
He doesn't need to. This is exactly it. Like, he doesn't need to do the Kobe thing for everyone to be like, oh, that was, like, it's just, look at that right in his face. He just doesn't need to.
Yeah.
He's, who would you compare him to, Josue? He has that, like, power forward type offensive game. You want him backing guys down, finishing in traffic through contact. He's not Kobe, like dribble, pull up. And there was another play in this game too, where he had a good matchup and he sized them up and he's dribbling. It's almost like he's trying to shake a guy more than he's thinking about getting into a shot and being on balance, because he pulled up after all the crossovers and missed it bad left. So it was a weird homestand for him in terms of his shot selection from the field. But Josue, he's not Kobe. I'm trying to think of who he is, but
I mean, I always thought he's like a hybrid between like Pierce and like Kevin Durant, right? because of the length and the way
Durant's a good comparison.
elevation.
Yeah.
But it's
But the
not because
footwork- the
Durant is
footwork
the
is
best
more
pull-up
polished.
shooter in the history of basketball.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a
I'm
guy
not
with
sure.
more of a power game. Yeah.
I'm not sure Tatum's the best, even the second or third best pull-up shooter in this team. What would you guys say?
They don't have a ton.
Because you got Drew now, but
Derek's been really good at it.
yeah, Drew.
But yeah, you get frustrated with those attempts, and I get why they do them just to stretch out the defense. But a lot of times they just toss them up and miss them, and they'd rather see the movement and the inside-out game. And Brown and Tatum shooting close to the basket too. Brown in transition makes the game much easier for himself. We say it all the time, John. Tatum made the game a little more difficult for himself in this one, and got into foul trouble with an offensive foul trying to power through a guy. On that good Magic challenge to knock him out of the second quarter.
But again, it's like with the stretch that Brown's having now, and when he's at his best, it's usually just basically leaning into the stuff that he's better at, making quicker decisions, moving the basketball, and not doing the stuff that gets him in trouble, which is dribbling into the lane, turning around,
Melo's a
kind of
good
losing
comparison.
himself. What's that?
Melo's a good comparison.
But Melo could friggin' stripe it. Like he was hitting those pull-ups all day long.
Well, Tatum will do that too sometimes. It's just streaky. So, and Melo had, especially in New York, that real power forward post-up bang game. He could be forceful in the lane, and that's where Tatum's at his best. Drawing free throws too, only 4. You like to see him closer to 8, 9, 10. And he wasn't bad tonight, but you see 8 for 21, and you're like, that's not efficient enough. There's a big reason during the stretches he played that the game got a little bit closer. And they were great to close the second with him off the court. Credit to Jalen, who was much more assertive and to the point and faster, right? That's the big difference between those two guys still, right? Brown has that burst into the half court and urgency that sometimes we're going, he's going to turn it over and make mistakes. But you need that on some nights because Tatum's going to bring it into the half court slower, size guys up, and take some of the shots like he did tonight against set defense. And these Magic guards aren't easy to score over. Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, they're short, but they're going to be right up under you guarding those. And they did a good job in mismatches of stopping him. Mo Wagner taking the charge. This is a really good defense. I think this is still the second best defense in the league in Orlando. So they made it tough on Tatum, and Brown, cracked the defense open with how fast and aggressive he played. That was the thing. Yep. Fast, get up the floor. They've hit 9 corner threes. I don't know how many they had in this one, John, but Corrales was asking, a few games ago why this team has some of the least corner threes in the league. I think a lot of it is that they don't play fast enough. They only had 3 in this one, so they didn't get that in this game. That was a big part of how they won on Friday. So they were fortunate. They started slow in this one. Tatum gets into foul trouble, but Brown really picked them up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, we're going to wrap.
And Paolo, man, he's great.
Programming notes, we have quite a few. Just so there's a lot going on today around the sports world. We have I'm not sure the exact order, but later on tonight, you're going to get the Still Potable podcast going out over, both our CLNS Media main YouTube and our Celtics All Access channel. Those guys are going to not only wrap up this game, but kind of do a general podcast about all Celtics matters. That's Jay King from The Athletic, Brian B-Rob from Mass Live, and Sam Jam Packard, podcaster extraordinaire. Those 3 and the Still Potable podcast, make sure to check them out. We also have 2 post-game shows for the Patriots. One coming up after the conclusion of the 4:00 games. That's on the Patriots Press Pass channel at 7:30. And then the guys from Pat's Pulpit, Pat and Matt, will be coming at you at halftime of the Sunday night game. So nonstop sports coverage on CLNS Media Network
Sunday night tonight.
I don't know.
Who's playing?
John's like, he's checked out of the NFL season.
I just had a fantasy season end with the second James Cook touchdown.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, with that,
and I had 2 seasons end tonight.
Jaguars.
That was me last week.
But one of them I had a legit title contender, and I just lost.
I think I lost Hammett. So Well,
It's gonna
we'll have
happen.
a-
I lost to Jimmy for sure. Or I was down. I haven't checked in a while.
so it's
in
gonna be
that
Jimmy
one,
versus Amit.
yeah, I don't think I can catch Jimmy.
Go on,
Yeah,
man.
no chance. Anyway, go on. Everyone hates Jimmy. We will see you guys from the West Coast. I'm not
He
sure how
eliminated
many
me.
of us will be around for the games, but we will be doing post-game shows every night. Doesn't matter how late the games go. You can catch us here on CLNS Media. We'll see you guys.